Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Amanda Lamb. Today's deep dive conversation is a special extra episode for our listeners about the massive power outage in Moore County with our Enterprise executive producer, Ashley Talley. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. We're also continuing our series today on Harper v. Moore. It's a Supreme Court case that started here in North Carolina. You can listen to part 2 of that series today in our WRAL Daily Download feed. But now, first to Moore County. And just a note to our listeners, we are recording this Monday evening, so if there are updates overnight, we will provide some links to you in the show notes. So, Ashley, first of all, you just finished watching a press conference, so this is still really unfolding. Can you go back a little bit in time and tell us how it all started?
Yes, this all started Saturday night around 7 p.m. Moore County got the first reports of widespread power outages. We learned today that the second substation went out within the same hour. So they did not happen at the same time, but within the same hour, 2 substations were taken out of commission, which caused power outages to over 40,000 people, like 45,000 at the height. They've been able to restore about 7,000 power to about 7,000 since then. But this was huge. This is in a county of about 100,000, so many people affected.
Right. I mean, a huge amount of people. That's about half the people in the county.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with 2 emergencies. You know, immediately you've got this power loss, but then this appears to be a criminal act, a shooting at these 2 substations. So there's a lot going on here. They're looking for suspects, but then they're also trying to restore power and also protect people and get them out of the cold. Tell me some of the things that are happening right now that have happened in the last 24 hours.
Yes, so the sheriff and some other officials came out yesterday, so Sunday afternoon, and said that they were instituting a curfew of 9 p.m. last night to try to keep people safe. There were a couple of accidents that happened when the stoplights went out on Saturday night, so they're trying to keep as many people home as possible. They also opened shelters for people that don't have another way of getting their homes heated, that were cold, that didn't have fireplaces or generators. They immediately started guarding these 2 substations where, like you said, somebody fired into transformers, shutting them down. And they also closed schools today. You know, also people weren't able to heat their homes, but the schools also didn't have power for the most part.
And then businesses obviously couldn't open. So this has a huge impact. So I know you were kind of helping manage this coverage, but you also got personally involved Sunday night. You did an interview. Who'd you interview and what did they have to say?
Yeah, I was so lucky. I talked to John Wellinghoff. He is former head of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So he knows exactly how these things work. I found his cell phone number. I called him. He called me right back. He was getting ready to walk into a play in Berkeley, California.
Wow.
I know.
And Good timing.
It was. And he was like, what happened? And he was like, wow, I can't believe they took out 2 substations. He called me back during intermission and we did the interview. And he really explained how this is not just an act of vandalism. He said that when somebody puts a high-powered rifle, a bullet, through the case of a transformer, it goes into the coils, shorts it out, and that device is no longer operable. It cannot be fixed. It has to be replaced. And he said it's not like you have an extra one at the next substation or down the road. A lot of times these have to actually be rebuilt, which is why the power outage 2 days later is still going on.
So it's a very specific crime. It's almost as if whoever did this absolutely knew what they were doing.
It does seem that way. We have asked the sheriff and other officials if they know if that this was pre-planned, that this was an organized attack. They say they're looking into that. They don't know. But what Mr. Wellinghoff told me is he studied a similar thing that happened in San Jose back in 2013 when this exact thing happened. Substations were shot at, taken off the grid, and he worries that some information that came out back then in a Wall Street Journal article actually could be informative.
Tutorial. Telling somebody how to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this situation could also be that for other people in the future. So it's an evolving situation. We're hearing power might not be restored till Thursday, which is really difficult for people in that county. What are some of the biggest concerns? I mean, obviously the temperatures are they've dipped very low at night.
They have. It was down in the 20s overnight last night. It is not warming up a heck of a lot the rest of this week. So that's obviously one of the big things. Another thing is there are a ton of assisted living facilities there, and it's a little bit of an aging county. So you have a lot of older people that need help. This is, that's difficult.
It's a crisis. I mean, this is an emergency
crisis
in that county.
And another person we spoke with this morning, our reporter Laura Levine talked with him. He said, these people did not take into consideration people that are on oxygen machines or CPAP machines, like that need stuff plugged in to live.
Right. So they're really trying to get to those people right now, I'm sure. Well, we will be back after the break with more from Ashley Talley on the investigation into what appears to be a targeted attack on Moore County's power system. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm talking with Ashley Talley about the unprecedented situation in Moore County. So Moore County Sheriff Ronnie Fields says this appears to be a criminal occurrence. He says it's something in his 40 years in law enforcement. He's never seen anything like this before. Tell me who is involved in this investigation, because it's not just the Moore County Sheriff's Office.
No, it has gone to the state level and now national. We know that the FBI plus the State Bureau of Investigations are now assisting. At the press conference that was held today, Monday evening, the governor was there. Eddie Buffalo, the head of the Department of Public Safety, was there offering their assistance. NC Emergency Management. This is a national operation at this point.
Yeah, and the sheriff, I know in an earlier press conference, talked about the people who did this as cowards. I mean, it was clear that he is really upset that someone would do this and target so many of the citizens in his county. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I thought his use of the word cowards in that press conference that he did Sunday was really interesting, because he said they did something that affected so many people and they're not coming out and explaining themselves or taking responsibility for it or anything like that. Gilbert Bays talked with the sheriff today. They have a long-running history. They've known each other for decades. And a couple of the quotes or a couple of the things that he said to Gilbert really stuck out to me. This is an older guy. He's been sheriff he's been in law enforcement for many years. And he said, it's scary. We're facing things today that I never in my lifetime thought we'd be facing. When this thing really happened, I thought, oh my Lord, we're close to a military base. The unrest across our nation, it's scary. When things like this start happening as a law enforcement officer that you're sworn an oath to protect the citizens here, it's very scary. I don't sleep very good at night.
Wow. I mean, that's intense. He's taking this personally, not for him, but for the people that he serves. And so that's something that you don't hear often from a very experienced law enforcement officer and a sheriff. So I know this is early in the investigation, but we have to talk about this. There has been a lot of controversy over a drag show that was being held at the Sunrise Theater in Southern Pines, and there had been a lot of talk online about this, specifically that people might be targeting this. And now there's talk that, hey, was this the target of this? Because when the power went out, that show was going on.
Yeah.
And that show ended up having to stop because of this. So,
So I can actually take you back in this story.
Yeah, please do.
I worked on Thanksgiving. And we went through various stories with Chelsea Donovan, and we ended up telling this story because already back then, this community was experiencing a ton of infighting and angst over this. It's something called the Downtown Divas. It's a drag show that was put on, like you said, at the theater downtown. A local Christian school actually sent a letter to all parents warning them about it, saying that it was an attack on all children in Moore County. So it's, the organizers who had been planning this drag show, have been super forthcoming and open about everything. And they said, I think it was the theater that said, okay, we're going to make this an 18 and up show. This is not about, any nefarious thing that anybody might think that it is.
For adults.
For adults, right, exactly. So that started back then, and it's just been growing since then. So that's, in the past 2 weeks, it's gotten even more. We got the permits that were applied for this. The protesters, on the protesting side, something called Moore County Patriots.
And they were going to protest, or they did protest outside the venue.
They did protest, yeah.
Okay.
And we have pretty active video where you see a ton of supporters there, there to support the performers and those that are attending the show, put on by Sandhills Pride. And then you have a pretty large contingent of protesters as well. We we talked with the guy this afternoon. He wouldn't go on camera. I said he didn't trust the media, but who applied for that protest permit against the event. And he told our Matt Tallhelm, he said, all I can tell you is that something like God told us where to be, and we were there.
Okay. So there's still an investigation into whether or not there's a link.
We cannot say that there's a link. We've asked multiple times in multiple ways, and there's no proof at this point.
Gotcha.
Social media, so much of the talk around this surrounds that. So just to take you through that timeline, like you were saying, the show started at 7. About 7:40 is when the power went out. We talked to one of the performers, Naomi Dix, today, who was one of the performers that night, and she said that she didn't know what was going on at first, but that she actually had people turn on their cell phone lights, and she kept performing for a while.
Right. So because they had no power.
Exactly. Right. So I love that. We also talked to another person inside who was in the audience who said when the power went out, she was terrified and she was waiting for gunshots.
Right, because we've just recently had violence against that community.
Club
in
Q in Colorado,
right.
yeah.
In Colorado.
Yep.
And so obviously there's fear there around that kind of an event that you might be the target. So,
but again, no direct link at this point. Okay. That is something we'll continue to follow all this week.
Continue to look at that. So we did mention in the first half of the show, it could be as late as Thursday. Walk us through why this is taking so long. I know you said that these parts literally have to be replaced. It's not like you can just fix this.
Yes, exactly. Again, back to John Wellinghoff, the former head of the Energy Regulatory Commission, he said it's not like a cookie cutter. You can't just replace them with another one. Jeff Brooks, a spokesman for Duke in the press conference today, said it's not like changing a light bulb. These are high-level technical things that often have to be made sort of a custom for that particular substation that they're at. So that can take days. They're still giving us the estimate of Thursday, but I think some people fear it could be longer.
And how's the community there coping? I mean, you mentioned, people in assisted living, people that really can't handle these temperatures.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of unrest there right now.
Yeah, the shelters are open. Only a couple dozen people have used those so far. And what I've seen is really the community coming together. They are offering hot meals today at one of the parking lots of a grocery store there. Tomorrow, somebody's giving a hot dog lunch to anybody that wants it. So you do see people coming together, coming out. Duke Energy has pledged $100,000 to help the community get back on its feet. These are smaller towns, Sanford, Carthage, Bass. Like, this is not a Raleigh-Durham where you have a massive infrastructure that can respond to something like this. So it seems that the community itself is really bonding, coming together to help one another.
Yeah, and I saw even some of the places that did have a generator or did still have power were offering, you can come charge your phone.
Yes.
Which is a big thing that we only think about in snowstorms and hurricanes, but
exactly.
They're dealing with something like that.
And that was what somebody in the community told Gilbert today. They said, this is worse than a hurricane because we have time to prepare for a hurricane. We can get our generators. We can get our power stocked up. We can get non-perishable food. This came out of nowhere on a Saturday night in December.
Right, exactly. Well, I know we will continue to follow this, Ashley, and you will continue to follow this. Thank you so much for sharing what you know and your insight about this developing story. And thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. You can also listen to entire WRAL newscasts in podcast form. Find WRAL newscasts in your podcast app. The feed is updated with new newscasts multiple times per day.